Halloween is right around the corner, so it's time to get scary. And I don't mean cheap jump scares, haunted houses, or tales of characters long, long dead. No, I'm here to deliver you true terror. Something far more frightening and horrific for us Star Rail players than even your favorite character being confirmed as a 4-star. The very idea itself, sending non-stop chills down my spine and angry viewers to my comments section. What truly makes it so utterly chilling though, is that despite all conventional wisdom, the hours spent theory crafting and calculating, the combined hopium and copium of an entire community, it is unmistakably, unquestionably real. Brace yourselves for the 4 words that will bring you to the absolute depths of terror and despair. Cyrene v4, no changes. I know what you want to hear from me, and you know what? I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. A few weeks ago, I had predicted that Cyrene would be an absolute must-pull character. I knew that she was terrible in V1, and I said as much, but I said that it was a given that she'd get absolutely massive buffs prior to her release. Evidently, I was completely wrong though, and she still has the exact same issue that made her awful in the first place. And since this is the one and only time I have ever and will ever be wrong about anything in Honkai Star Rail, it's only fair that you get your moment to unrelentingly clown on me and point out how dumb I was. Heck, I encourage it even. It really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So now we're at somewhat of a difficult spot, because whereas before, I was able to essentially hand-wave all of the problems that her kid had, figuring her buffs would make up for them, with V4 out and no V5 planned, these issues have gone from no big deal to this is the most fraudulent character since Jiaoqiu. So what's changed from V1 to V4? Well, Maide moves to the top of the tier list for Cyrene characters, since Hoyo actually remembered that he exists and just decided to give him like 500% crit damage. So to the Maide mains, all 7 of you, your moment is now here. The Prince of Kremnos will be crowned in crit damage and anti-synergy. As for everyone else, how many other teams is Cyrene a must pull? 0. There are 0 other teams where Cyrene is a clear, significant best-in-slot replacement. Now she may be as good or even slightly better than a current best-in-slot for a team or 2, but for a character to be a worthwhile pull, they need to be significantly more powerful and ideally more versatile than their previous counterpart. So take Ceredra, who, despite how much people swore she wouldn't be a worthwhile pull, absolutely was, with just how much of a difference she made for Phainon and Anaxa teams. The difference in damage output between her and Bronya for Phainon comps, or her and Robin for Anaxa comps, made her a clear essential unit whose value was well worth the pulls, given the unique new mechanics she brings to comps. On the other hand, a character like Evernight, despite being quite powerful on her own, isn't such a large improvement where one would really need to pull for her, unless somehow you don't have casters, but do have all her best teammates. I made a big deal about the power-ups she gives Phainon, which, make no mistake, are unbelievably strong. The issue is, Phainon's already a notoriously slow ramping character. If you replace Sunday, simply put, you won't get enough turns to charge his ult traditionally, so you'll need to wait for Cyrene to charge it for him, which also takes an Amber era, especially since the only Memo sprite is Daniel's. What would solve this issue? Let's talk about Anaxa, whose synergy actually kinda got nerfed in a hilarious turn of events. Essentially, when paired with Anaxa, Cyrene will now give a buff to all erudition units on the team, while reducing the potential action advance for Anaxa hypercarry. But at least that makes Cyrene the new best support for duo erudition teams. Right? Right? No! Obviously not. If you're running Herta and Anaxa, there are only a max of 3 Chrysos heirs on that team, so it'll take even longer to charge Cyrene's ults. And don't forget, Cyrene needs to constantly target Anaxa for the ult since it's not permanent. And she's completely skill point negative for one of the most skill point negative teams in the game. And Cyrene's buffs for Herta herself, as they are for all non-Chrysos heirs, are terrible. Let me ask you again, what would solve this issue? Now why don't we move on to the other side of the most toxic situationship in Amphoreus' history, in Aglaea. The buffs she gets are still certainly impactful, but she also needs Sunday, so once again, we're rocking with extremely low uptime. Now the team is extremely restrictive, using the most vied after characters, all to facilitate buffs that come insanely infrequently. So let me ask you once again, what would solve this issue? Well, there is one team that she's definitely suitable for, and it's, of course, the Castorice comp. So Cass, Evernight, Cyrene, and Hyacine. Perfect synergy, plenty of HP to go around, there you go. And yeah, it's definitely the strongest, but not by that much. Seriously, this team is obviously still the strongest by an absurdly large margin, so it only makes sense to invest even further if and only if the new character is next level, game-breakingly stupid. Yet despite Cyrene having such high synergy, she still basically faces the same problems as Evernight, where her value is hit super hard by diminishing returns. So no, I don't think her strength on the Castorice team makes her a worthwhile pull either. So for the final time, what would solve this issue? Wait. This makes no sense. Given everything that we know, how she's Hoyo's golden child, how she's the only limited unit you can pull for the entire patch, how they spent the combined GDP of Eastern Europe towards her animation budget, why would they release her in such a sorry state? I had made the argument that Hoyo would only naturally make her strong to get people to pull. However, I had seriously underestimated just how greedy they would get, because there is a version of Cyrene whose main issue is completely fixed and actually does become the clear best in slot in just about every single team. It's just locked behind her E2. Cyrene's E2 makes stack generation what it, by all accounts, should be with her base kit. So essentially, Hoyo expects you to go all the way to E2 to be able to actually use Cyrene. Let's be clear about this. Hoyo is very intentional about the way they design their releases. It's not about making balanced characters or ensuring the continued health of the game. It's about making money. Hoyo ran the numbers and realized that the most profitable thing for them to do is to release Cyrene in this state so that they'd maximize their earnings, figuring that through high spenders and people just desperate in general, this version would lead to the most amount of revenue. In spite of all the speculation and confusion within the Star Rail community, this is the obvious fact of the matter. And honestly, at this point, it should be clear as day to everyone. I understand that people watch my videos and think that I'm telling them who to pull for. That's never been my intention. People should pull for who they like, and if what I say in my videos convinces someone to pull, that's okay, but it's not what I'm trying to accomplish. What I'm trying to do is make great Star Rail content that's entertaining and maybe a bit informative. However, and I think this will be the only time I say this, I don't think you should pull for this character. You can even ignore the questionable practices that Hoyo is engaging in if you'd like. Just from a practical gameplay perspective, Cyrene might legitimately be one of the least valuable additions to your account. As I talked about in the Cyrene vid, it's terrible for the health of the game to release a character dedicated to buffing the current strongest characters in the meta. But the more you think about it, the more you realize just how much of a double-edged sword that is. Sure, you'll maybe make your current teams, which are already the strongest the game has to offer, even better. But the problem is, you aren't able to transition that into future units whatsoever. Imagine if Robin was only able to be used with Penacony characters. Her overall value as a unit would be absolutely abysmal. The fact that you won't be able to transition her into future teams really just makes her a win now type of character for teams that are already winning now. And just think about how quickly power creep nukes characters from relevancy. Do you really expect me to believe the likes of Mayday and Aglaea will still be a viable unit by mid next year? If not, then this character will be doing literally nothing for your account. So at the end of the day, she's a nice looking character with gameplay that's cool, yet largely inconsequential. At E0, she'll hardly even be usable. And for the amount of investment required for E2, you'd almost certainly be better off waiting to get whatever monstrosity they bring us in 4.0. And I'm gonna close this video with a sentence I never thought would be able to be said without sounding like an actual insane person, yet is objectively 100% true. Ceredra is a way better character than Cyrene. Thank you for watching. More Star Rail videos coming soon.
Anyway, $4 a pound.